have you know the Let's Play Waiting for Lefty? It's a taxi driver strike, and the whole, it's kind of a shaggy dog story. And we're all through the first act, we're waiting for Lefty. He's going to come and straighten out the strike. And at the end, somebody comes on and says, Lefty's been shot and killed, and I feel like Lefty. But what I had, or have, is pretty much, I was going to say something and get a lot of participation. So what I'll do is drop the idea out, and then you just participate on your own time. Boredom, in the movie Passion Fish, one of the characters says, it's a job that's supposed to be boring. And I can't quite accept that. I had to come to terms a little while ago with the fact that I was doing a lot of practicing to get my head straightened out after the work I was doing in the daytime. And it didn't make a lot of sense that I was having to do corrective work to neutralize the bad things that I was doing in my head in the daytime. So I'm fairly self-taught. I didn't really learn to study the piano, seriously until I was in my 30s. I was a trombone player, but I let it slide. Like a lot of us, I just lucked in and fell into dance accompanying because I had that strange kinesthetic gift that Bill was talking about this morning. So I have so little technique that I have to mean when I play, if you know what I mean. I can't just set the machine going and revel in what happens because I know all this stuff. So what I had to come to terms with was, I'm not talking about the boredom when you're not playing, when the teacher's talking and the teacher's talking and the teacher's talking. Although I read poetry during that because I think it's good for the rhythm, and it's short lines and you can absorb a couple of lines, but it helps me keep me tight in the speech rhythm. But it's boredom with my own stuff, which is. I'm sure each of us, it's happened to us. But if you think about it, it's really a form of despair. It's believing that you can't do anything about the way you play at that particular moment. And it's a sort of lack of hope in your own creativity. So, I got to thinking that way. I said, I have to fix something. So, a lot of it is thinking the night before about what I'm going to do the next day, or thinking while the teacher's talking about what I'm going to do next. But there's something that actors do called a repetition exercise in the Meister training, which kids in our students do. And what it means is that you do something so many times that you have to get off yourself. You have to get unconscious of yourself and conscious with the material that you're using. And actors do it because they have to get rid of themselves, the person whose name is in the program, and become the character. And my wife's an actress, and she learned to do the same thing by just doing the same show, 80 times, or it's like a bus and truck sort of thing. But it's getting your concentration off yourself and off the boring situation, the fact that you're in the same damn studio, the same blinking light up there, and the same piano, and put your concentration on the music, on the actual stuff that we're messing with, because we all love music, and we shouldn't be bored with what we're doing. And it sounds sort of esoteric and visionary, but just an example that I do is, I have Alec Wilde. I played tap for 1,000 years in New York for Pavarotti, so I know hundreds of tunes with that wonderful chord progression, that the common practice, popular style chord progressions. It's such a well-oiled, perfect machine. The harmonic style that Gershwin and Rogers and Cole Porter and Vincent Hughes and all these people did. I know hundreds of those tunes. So you turn one into an adage or into a waltz, and it's. In a sense, it's sort of subversive, but in another sense, it's a kind of a spur to your creativity. It's obvious, but you know, you can play this thing 4 ways. We'll just go. Is happy with something like that. It's something he can recognize that it's been messed with, so that it fits the class. I'm hurrying along because I'm going to be done, and then just ask you to think about things. Another ballet teacher, the class is by definition boring to me because it's the same steps, the same class basically every day for a whole semester. So you play the first combination in C, you play the next combination in A, F minor, D, B flat, G, E flat. You start at A minor, go F, D, B flat. You know, it's crazy, but it gets you off of the stressful situation and puts you on you're thinking about the music, you're thinking about the stuff you do. So what I was going to do is give a million examples and then ask people from the guild to give possible examples that they use. And depending on how much time we have, and I don't want to take a lot of time because I really want to hear Janet's and John's thing. You see my point, though, that it's a form of despair and hopelessness by just sitting here, oh God, I hate this. You know, why am I doing this to you? You know, and I myself just felt I had to take charge. You know, that sort of thinking, and take command of the art that I love and I actually make a living doing. And I know when Greg, I talked to you, you said this should really be a nuts and bolts thing, but I don't think we have time for the nuts and bolts. So I'm going to hang it up right now. And does anybody have like a really, well, Bruce, you have some good, tricks to keep musically interested.
Well, actually, I was going to say I can go one of two ways. On one hand, I can bring in some magazines. Smithsonian works
well, I can't read one I play.
That only really works when there's a teacher whose style is so, or there's pattern of pieces is so ingrained. No one would do it anyway, and it hasn't varied for 5 years. So the Smithsonian comes out. And I don't know what they'll do anyway. The other extreme is I'm just trying to have a constant turnaround of new material. I'm a composer, so I write a lot of my own stuff. It works for ballet class, or I have other stuff for modern class. So at least I can bring some my own creativity into the class. The disadvantage there is that it can be hard work. Say, even the kind of minimal half-an-hour investment that you might take to write a new plie exercise or something. So you have to prepare, but in the long run, when I do take the time and try to be creative, it helps tremendously. I can't say that it solves the problem, but it certainly helps.
I find reading in between exercises to be a bringer on of boredom. I get much more bored when I read, and I don't do that. And that's because what happens is that the class loses its focus, it loses a sense of identity. I don't learn anything. I always learn something when I'm watching the teacher teach and watching the students dance. I don't find that. And I find when I read, I don't get into that. I can't concentrate on the reading. I can't concentrate on the musical flow of the energy in the class. And to me, that really is a quick way to get bored. I don't know if anybody else has that feeling, but
I was going to go in a similar direction, which is more, and this is interesting because sometimes when you're playing, you feel like you're being asked to do a lot, and sometimes the answer for me, and I really hit a wall. Like after 10 years of having last year, I took a year off, I didn't play at all, and now I'm really excited about it again for a variety of reasons. But one of them is that I'm putting more into my playing. I had stopped warming up, I had stopped learning new music, I had stopped taking the time to feel good about my playing. So when the class started, here I was thinking only of my function within class and not enough about my own ideas and how much, like you said, how much I love music. And like Bruce said, well, how can I play some of my own music? Sometimes when I'm bored with a class, it's a signal to me that I need to go a half hour early the next time that class meets and really think about it and really get ready or have a discussion with the teacher about their goals, his goals. And I think sometimes you have to, in other words, you have to dig deeper into what it was, and it'll come back because you do love what you're doing.
For modern classes, I do something similar to, we talked about playing in the different keys, except I do it with intervals. Like, well, maybe I'm going to have this particular piece be primarily using seconds. Or maybe I'll use thirds in the right hand and seconds in the left hand and see how many different ways I can do that. And that seems to help me.
I was just thinking, Bruce said, that maybe if Bach could generate a new cantata every Sunday, we could generate some, literally take the time to compose even one exercise new periodically, and actually, but committing it to paper rather than leave it in some kind of nebulous improvisational state, we would start to respect the process a little more.
How about collecting it and have a guild collection so
I'm
you
gonna
can inspire
put it in
each
the-
other?
Kathy, you're always finding the money angle. I just
They would lose money. At least it's share ideas.
Actually, if you look at it from the, switching it from the other way around, I've gotten plenty of complaints from dancers taking classes that the accompanist X has been playing the same pieces the same
Yeah.
way for 10 years.
Yes, but they don't tell the musician, they tell you. That's the interesting thing.
Yeah. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yes.
For the first time in about 25 years, I find myself playing for a teacher with whom I have absolutely no kinesthetic response whatsoever. So I dread going in there. And I've had, so it wasn't boredom I was fighting, it was just like, ugh, do I really have, and I began really to think through ways. I mean, this is no good for the class at all because I'm paying zero attention to them. So I have set some things to accomplish for myself. Things like, I never improvise in the key of B major. It's too hard. So now today I'm going to do the sharp keys because I never do them. They're just too hard. I'm going to play in D flat major, except I'm going to think about it being C sharp major for once in my life. And those are the only things I found that get me through this class. The class is over, and I haven't a clue what they've done. I shouldn't be confessing this.
It's on tape.
On tape.
Oh well. And by the time it's done, I have, as you were saying, I've practiced something for myself, but I really believe I'm of zero value for the class. So I'm not exactly bored with it. It's just that I'm playing for someone, and unfortunately for someone for whom I have no respect, and that's really difficult. So it's a different kind of frustration.
Yes, actually, that hits on a really important topic. That really does hit up on an important topic aspect, and that's something that we haven't talked very much about in this conference, but I think it's the underside, the underbelly of our profession, and that is human relations. Because dance in itself is interesting, I propose. And music in itself is interesting, I propose. And humans, when we can get through the crust, are interesting, I propose. Not that we're going to love every teacher as much the same way, or every class, or every style. No. There's always personal taste. And some people are nearly impossible. But if you can find anything in common, sometimes the other person will open up more, and there'll be more reflection of interaction going on, rather than just coping with the fact that it isn't your major love affair of life. Because let us remember one of our major love affairs for everyone in this room is either music or dance or the combination. Now, we have, and everything else you do with your life is your business and may not have anything directly to do with the profession, although I would propose it does. So let's not forget the human aspects of this. If we forget them, they'll boil over and we'll read too many comic books. And I don't have any answers, but it's an element we need to address, as well as the art form and the arts. Don't forget that we are the ones doing it. We are people. No answers, just a bunch of ideas.
I would add one more thing that I think that's such a good point, Glenn, because I think that even in the teaching issues that Richard had raised, that one of the things that I find is so difficult is that you have to constantly set up the circumstances so that people will listen in order to actually have any impact with anything you give. And so that's why I think this potential for boredom as an accompanist or as a musician in class, when there is no real relationship, real authentic relationship with the teacher, you really are working so much on an island, in isolation. The nice thing is when you are the teacher, that you have that power to kind of reinvent the circumstances and maybe have a different kind of experience because you really are more completely in control. I was thinking that a lot of times I spend at least 10 minutes making sure that I have a listening group of students to even begin a class, because I'm getting them often at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, after 2 or 3 technique classes, low blood sugar, and all the reasons, potential reasons where they might benefit from anything I could possibly offer them have been so diminished. Not to mention the sounds of Second Avenue or all the other environmental problems that might be conspiring to make it impossible. So it really is a I find teaching is so extraordinarily physical because of how demanding it is to get everybody to pay attention and to really accomplish the task at hand.
I'd like to add that I think it's an equity situation too. When I hear that kind of discussion, if you were teaching those students and if you were part of that hour and a half as a teacher artist, musician artist, working, collaborating, then you would have a vested interest in those kids. You'd know how, well, you didn't step on the one, or how come you could talk, you'd have something to talk about. And it occurs to me that probably the best thing that can happen in this field for dance is for you all, like Richard, to just get up and say, I want to teach choreography, or really meet those dance students so that they see you as a teacher, as a role model, and as someone who's actively participating. It seems to me that we must have gotten into a terrible state in dance departments if they were even talking about boredom from anybody.
The few teachers that will allow me to be an active participant in the class in ways other than playing music for the dance, I appreciate, and I try not to step over the offer extended to me, so I try to be extremely brief, but I find myself with those who will allow me to, after we've done something, if there's something to be said about what we just did that is so relevant to some cogent, informative point about dance or music, I tend to insert it there. And so in those relationships, of course, we look eagerly to going to class. Because then there we are parenting as two human beings. Doesn't matter the sex of either person in the role of teacher or musician, but it is actually between the two that the class is occurring. And like any marriage, any relationship between any two people, and including the dancers or the art formers is like the child. And so actually, where is... Lyle and I were talking about this about an hour ago.
He got bored.
That the classroom and the art form is the baby that is being either born or gestated or raised or occurring. It's the child. And if we simply think of in the world at large, the varieties of types of relationships that we've ever encountered or even known about regarding both parents and regarding both the treatment of children, then every one of those things can be an example of what happens in our dance classes. And of course, we would aim ideally for the better relationships and the better treatment and the better understanding. We're suffering from malnutrition of the emotions. Not only emotions, something else, deeper, bigger. But if we're bored, and heaven, would you believe that Gwendolyn Watson has been bored? I've really almost stopped playing for dance several times in my life. Thank you, Robert. So I'm going to stop speaking. Won't that be nice? But think of what we do. Think of what we do as relationshipal. I'm coining a word now. I can't even find the right one. And the teacher and the musician are the parents. And what happens in the room is the interaction, the intercourse, if you will, of the art. And it's
you know,
either
it
good or
doesn't have
bad.
to just be nice.
No,
I had a fight
heavens no.
Once I had Tom Farrell, the two of us were behind the piano, literally almost fisticuffs. The kids never forgot it.
Yeah,
It
that
was
can
sort
be
of
a
like,
learning device.
no, Tom, that's not, yes, that's what you mean, but this is, you know, we really got into such a heated discussion over something that is,
Well, we're living examples for the students to learn from. And just as all of us have learned from our parents, this and that and this and that, if we as musicians don't participate equally, we are robbing the situation of its full fruition. So let us try to bring ourselves more into the, not the forefront, but the side by side.
or equal.
That's what side by side is what I mean. Walking down the same street, hand in hand, the same way. Most of the time.
I think boredom's real important.
Bill.
It really is. It's the thing that pushes you on.
Exactly, that's the prelude to
if we-
breakthrough.
That's the prelude to the breakthrough, and that's
Something
when,
like a good
and you always
crisis.
need that, and you always go through it, and it happens regularly, and then you get pissed off, and then you get on to the next thing, you know? I think it's real important.
Why didn't we have this on you when you said that?
Time for another thing.
Time for another?
Maybe we should move along.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for waiting.
I did, it's just a silly little 2-minute thing. And then the second thing that follows that is some rare footage of Louis teaching, so little, of Louis teaching a neighborhood playhouse. It was on a CBS special that we dug out of the archives.
You ready now?
Ted Belmont and the piano.
That help?
I never listen to modern music, except when I'm looking for something. And I know that when I'm very tired, and I used to do this with Louis Horst always, when I'd be choreographing, and of course I didn't know a thing about choreographing at all, and I still don't think I do. I just know what seems to work at that given moment, whether people agree with me at all. And I get very tired, and I lie down on the floor, and I say, "Oh, Louis, play me the Maple Leaf Rag." And so he would play the Maple Leaf Rag for me. And that was my way of letting go of everything, you see, and I still use it.
Chris Lambert.
It's a sort of celebration.
In choreographer and composer Louis Horst's class, Joanne Woodward learned that the body, properly used, can convey feeling. As part of their training, these actors create their own dances. Just keep working at it. Now we'll try the War Machine. And 1, 2, 0, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2, 6, 2, 8, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 9. Boys, that gets better every time. Little duet.
In 1928, 30 years ago, founded by Alice Nardine Lewison. Since then, we have trained hundreds of people, among them Jeffrey Peck, Tony Randall, Eli Waller, Richard Boone, Joe Van Peet, and Joan. We're very proud of Joan. We told Joan just what we tell every applicant. We offer you a stern apprenticeship under teachers, each of whom is an artist in his field, like Martha Graham, Stanford Meisner, Louis Horst. We said to Joan, come here only if you are willing to work hard enough to meet the standards set by these teachers. The most important lesson we teach aspiring young actors is understand and learn your craft.
That's it. Well, that's where we were in 1950.
How long are we gonna go, by the way, before we get into it?
You have your full hour, I think, because we're, am I right?
This dinner started
6.
till 6?
Greg, is that right? Till 6? We have till 6.
Should we go?
We could, yeah, we'll go straight to dinner though, that means no
That's fine.
No bathroom break, right?
We have to leave at 6:30 for Tallahassee.
6:30.
Okay, why don't we stop? We'll stop at 5:45.
7:30.
Are we gonna eat before we go?
No,
For you. You have to give up.
Okay. We'll try to stop at 5:45 without killing ourselves.
What's going to happen here is we talk just briefly, and
It is.
I think I'm going to kind of interject, or, maybe we can be conversational about a lot of this session. I'm kind of here to listen and to, react and
Okay.
add or jump up and down. I
Right.
don't believe
Or
you.
will, I'm going to sort of condense what I was going to say to make this go faster. But as a lot of you fell into modern dance, playing modern dance in a strange way, it wasn't something I chose to do, but sort of chose me. And after a while of hearing, about the 4 pioneers and all this kind of stuff, I started wondering, well, in addition to the pioneers, and you hear about Louis Horst, who were all the other people? I was thinking about the membership of our august group here, right? And we were having a talk the other day about Louis Horst, who's the Louis Horst of the day? Well, I started thinking, well, who else is there besides Louis Horst, right? What was going on there? Well, I had the opportunity to spend a month in New York City this summer, and spent half the time working on finishing up my orchestral fantasy, and the other half of the time spent in the dance collection at the New York Public Library, looking at videos and beginning a research project on the other people. And what I've done over the past few months, well, is gone through this wonderful journal called the Dance Observer. I don't know how many of you know about the Dance Observer. Let's have a show of hands, see how many people know about the Dance Observer. Okay, quite a few. The Dance Observer was started in 1934 by Louis Horst and a bunch of other people, but he was the prime mover behind it. Actually, it died when he died, if I'm not mistaken on that. And it was the periodical devoted to modern dance, as opposed to Dance Magazine, which main focus was the ballet, and a couple other periodicals were devoted to the ballet. But the Dance Observer is a very rich resource for any information about the modern dance, and it is the prime printed resource about the modern dance. And I have a bunch of Xeroxes here. Actually, I have here, I think, virtually all of the articles that have to do with music that were in the Dance Observer over its 30 years here, so you can look at them. And Janet has done the same thing. I discovered, much to my dismay, I was talking to her on the phone. And said, well, I did all this and this. Well, I did that
I
already.
said it's already in the publishers.
Well, actually, I do.
Janet,
I know, I submitted it.
I submitted it too a couple of years ago, and my publisher said, oh no, it's already available, it's already in print.
But-
People have it, which isn't true.
But I have
You should put it
I have
together.
part of the reason I started doing all this research, and you may have read last year's journal, I had an article in there about Martha Graham and her composers, was motivated by the need to get some music history credits for my master's degree, which I'm working on. But it's a good impetus to do some good work. But I do happen to have a professor who has into a fellow on the American Musicological Society board, who's now printing source material in music history, and they're very interested in doing this. So I think Janet and this book may very well.
So convince us that this is really great material to be reproduced. Do you think it's,
Right now,
I mean, you read through those things, and what, you were going to mention some of the things that sounded really wonderful and
right. Well,
innovative.
Since the main editor of this was Louis Horst, and he had a musician's point of view, a lot of articles in this are devoted to music concerns about music by itself or music for the dance. There really are no comparable writings about music and dance from the musician's point of view. There are no comparable writings about what music should be in terms of dance music. How should music relate to dance? In what relation should the music be stronger than the dance? Should the music be weaker than the dance? What form should the music have in order to best support the dance? Things like this. It's really the only resource, the only source readings. It's the major source of source readings I know for this topic, and that's a big reason right there. I mean, we could go into them one by one to talk about them, but in the interest of time, I think that's enough. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, I was just curious, for example, if you're going to talk about Lehman England, the elastic and all that, are they really, as a composer, when you read these materials, were they meaningful and innovative even now?
Yes, they were very
Yeah,
meaningful.
I would agree with that. I've done a similar thing as you, gone back through the very old journals, trying to kind of collect this type of thing. And I actually use some of them in some of my teachings, some of the Norman and Lloyd writings, I think are still timely. And when I was, remember, as I was first learning to accompany, there was really nothing out there. There was Gerald Lischka's Handbook of the Ballet Accompanist was about it. And I didn't realize at that time that Kathy was writing her book, and that Diane Sawyer, or Elizabeth Sawyer, excuse me. Elizabeth Sawyer was writing her book, because I wrote my doctoral essay on a manual for the beginning ballet accompanist. It would have been nice to know that these things were out there. I just didn't delve quite deeply enough at that time. We didn't have these volumes available at our library at the time. We do have some of these old volumes at the University of Arizona Library, and I started, kind of going through that as you have.
The University of Missouri has maybe 20 out of the 30 years, and then the rest I was able to see in the public library. Actually, if you're going to look at them, look at the ones downstairs, not the ones upstairs, because nobody knows they're downstairs, and they're in good shape. The ones upstairs, trash.
History to this, just really.
Go ahead.
Not doing the plan. But just from those photographs, just knowing, you all know the history of modern dance, and the Denishon was where they were all coming from, and they were performers. And Louis, as the music director, stayed on for 10 years. That was a long time, and they were always rehearsing. Stuff was happening all the time. They were touring. And Louis just reached a point where he was tired. He was in love with Martha. They were trying to find a good way to get away from Miss Ruth. And so what he finally determined to do is, well, okay, well, I'll just say I have to go, I'll go study in Vienna. And that was really his way to make a clean getaway, if you ask me. And then when he came back, it was kind of like, okay, it is 1926, and in Europe they're serious about this. We have serious competition over there. I think you recognize that. Across the Wigman that whole thing was serious competition. We have to get our act together. And he saw Martha as the person to get the act together with. And so the two of them, in this way of starting fresh in the studio, just the two of them, really, I think, began the serious innovation, the serious music-dance relationship in the very sparsest, less is more, economy of means, in the most, as Louis saw it, in a romantic way, the most austere American way to do it. And finally convinced Doris a few years later to leave Denishon too, and then Doris, I think, Louis saw Doris as the choreographer. Martha was the dancer, but Doris was the choreographer. She understood. She was already choreographing for Denishon. She had a good sense of how to put things together. But I really feel as though the beginning of modern dance, in a sense, as what we're talking about, really happened in 1926 because Louis was in love with Martha. And they had each other. And Louis was his first. He was the first composition teacher. There was no such thing as choreography before then. You just put things together. We are seriously going to compose. And the question came up earlier in terms of, well, was Louis really a great composer? I don't think he was a great composer. I think, in fact, he recognized the talent in Martha to be the genius of the two of them. And it was his disciplining her and using every device he knew possibly to work with her that created, and that was his first and best student. And he always said there was no choreography before then. And I think we can even look at the DI look and say, well, what is choreography? This was a fresh start. And I think this goes back to the whole business of starting in, with 1930s and the idealism and new dance and what was happening with American composers who may or may not have gone off to Paris to study. And they were ready. They all lived within about 2 or 3 city blocks of one another. That was the other thing. I mean, it was really a community of dancers and musicians that all fell between West 10th and West 12th. You know, they all lived there. Just say if a bomb went off in that area, there wouldn't have been a modern dance. There probably wouldn't be any beginning music, because that's where it all was happening. At the New School, with the Henry Cowell lectures, with the John Martin lectures. That was where they were friends. Except Tanya. They liked Tanya, but they kept their distance from her. Did I set you up to the 30s?
Yes, you did. You did.
We haven't got to the publishing of Dancing Zero, and it was Louis who literally said, and nobody got paid to write those articles, you know. They just, Louis would, young Lehman, and he studied with Wallingford Rieger. Louis studied composition with Wallingford Rieger, who was very stodgy, and I don't think it went too well, but it became a nice friendship, and so when Wallingford Rieger ended up writing scores, it was a kind of nice thing that happened. But I think they're about the same age, weren't they? Maybe Wallingford was a little old. So there was a kind of, they saw themselves as you know, they went out for drinks together, really. I don't think they did much, Louis did much learning from Wallingford Rieger, but he did pull him
Sounds
in,
like
as
my
with
composition teacher.
Lehman Engel was, who was young at the time, Noisy Sunshine, they used to call him. He was Noisy Sunshine, and Martha loved him. He was a lot of fun to be with, and he was in Gaga, oh yeah, I'll write a piece of music.
Well, perhaps I'll go back and do a little background, and these anecdotes might make a little bit of sense to those
Okay.
who don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. One of the great things about the Dance Observer was all the reviews in there. And what I did was a very tedious thing. Just to backtrack here, I'm really focused on the time span of the early 30s, 1933, 32, through just around the World War II years. That's sort of the time span I'm focusing on for a number of reasons, but we don't need to talk about those. But one of the things I've done is gone through all of those reviews. I think I've done them exclusively and made a database of who composed what piece of music for what choreographer. And it's fairly exhaustive. I've left out all the college scene because it gets too vast and crazy, except for a few sort of significant ones. But what I have here is a pretty exhaustive database of all these people who are working, you know, and I left out pre-composed music pretty much, right? But pretty much I got the ones that people specially composed.
These were just 32 and 33 and 34?
No, this is 30, these are from 32 through 45.
How many composers are there in that?
Well,
Roughly.
this list is a very interesting list, and I thought I would share some of the
Yeah.
things with it. The number of composers, well, how many fit on page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 16, 21, I mean, 42, 84, I have about 110 different composers. Oh, I don't know that. I'm sorry, I don't have that statistic at my fingertips.
But still, you're talking about 110 composers.
You're talking about a huge base of people that were employed to write scores for modern dance, right? Just in this 2-block area.
Well,
I don't know, this is over a span of years. So
John,
it's
you used the word employed. I mean, was it not perhaps a much
Well,
more generous association?
Yeah, perhaps. Maybe they were paid in
Or less
aesthetic
generous.
fulfillment or
Or
something.
dinner?
Dinner. Or who knows what.
Ruth Lloyd, when we interviewed Ruth Lloyd, she said that nobody had any money at all and nobody got paid anything at all, but since nobody had any money, they all just joined together in that kind of camaraderie and
Right.
shared food for dinner and all that. And that was
Well,
what it was
it's
like.
interesting to feel, when you're reading the Dance Observer, you can really get a feeling for the excitement of what Janice was talking about. Janet, sorry, it's my wife's name is Janice. One quote really, I think, sums it up. Henry Cowell, who wrote quite a bit in the Dance Observer, wrote, arguments occupying half the night and getting nowhere, fights lasting half the rehearsal time and still getting nowhere, comments from all sides in the dance press. These frequent happenings are but symptoms of the puzzling problems presented today in the relation of music to dance. So just from that quote, you can get a sense of the excitement and the real passion that was happening as this new art form was emerging. I'll get to this idea of a new art form emerging after I talk about these composers. But it's interesting to read this list of composers. People, you know, we were talking, I think, about composers disassociating themselves from dance, right? But check out this list of people who really cut their teeth on modern dance, who got pretty much a lot of their first performances of their music through writing dance scores. I mean, I'm the same way. And so I feel a real kinship with these people, and I think probably a lot of us do too. A lot of these names are not recognizable. Joseph Akron, who knows who he was, right? Well, he translated Rimsky-Korsakov's Harmony Treatise into English. There's a little trivia there. Roger Adams, he wrote 5 scores. I found out. I don't know who Roger Adams is. Antonio Albanese was a Spanish dude who came over and did a lot of stuff. George Antile ended up writing 4 scores. He's sort of known. Samuel Barber, of course. A lot of these people you don't know. Pasquin Bradfield, who was he? You know, kind of get into seeing what he did. Henry Grant is sort of well known. He wrote a lot of stuff for. Of course, John Cage, you all know about Cunningham, but he wrote a ton of stuff before he got involved with Merce Cunningham. He was very involved in things, and I have some interesting revelations about that. There's a bunch of people, again, we don't know. Mary Campbell, who was she? Baker Case.
Mary Campbell worked with Jimmy.
Oh, right, Mary Campbell. Okay, she did work at, okay, so we have a little information. Mary Campbell. But some more interesting names, I mean, you know, well, I don't know if we all know this, I didn't really know this, that Henry Cowell was very, very involved in modern dance, extremely so, passionately so. I didn't know this, but so this is just personal ignorance coming up. Paul Preston worked a lot in modern dance. David Diamond, I have 9 scores that he wrote for modern dance. This fellow named Lehman Engel, who is quite famous as a Broadway conductor, he wrote a bunch of stuff. Morton Feldman, Vivian Fine, Eugene Finkelhor, anybody know who he is?
My favorite.
Somebody named Ralph Gilbert was very important.
Yeah.
Okay. Roy Harris wrote a bunch of stuff for Honey Home. Lou Harrison, Herbert Halfrecht, do you know him? Coming to Tuba? Louis Horst, of course, is in here a lot. Hazel Johnson, Hunter Johnson, Harrison Kerr, George Kleinsinger. Oh, he's the coming to Tuba. Okay, Norman Lloyd, of course, wrote a bunch of stuff. Alex North is very involved in modern dance, who became quite famous for his score to what?
Streetcar.
Alice was married to Snow, right? Snow? Alex North, sure.
Colin McPhee, Robert McBride, Frida Miller, Jerome Ross, who became quite a famous Hollywood composer, and somebody named Genevieve Pitot. I wish somebody could clue me in on her. I know she was a dancer, and she worked a lot with Tamiris, a whole lot, and her name just doesn't come up in any music whatsoever. Wallingford Rieger, of course, wrote a lot. Genevieve Pitot, P-I-T-O-T.
She had some publications of music for dance and records.
Huh. Yeah, I'd be very interested in finding, because she turns up a lot. Bernardo Segal, does anybody know his music? Siegel? Siegel, I don't know. Does anybody know about him?
He wrote, isn't he the one who wrote the Western Symphony or whatever? I think he did, using, it was around the time when Copland was writing all the Western Americana stuff. He wrote a Western Symphony also using cowboy folk songs.
No, I think that was
That was some Siegel, or maybe it was Siegmeister?
no, it's Hershey K.
No, but it's the same idea. I think it was.
It could be a different
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Dane Rudyard, very famous astrologist, was very involved in modern dance and wrote a number of scores for modern dance. Alec Templeton, Randall Thompson, Tucker, Mary Lou Williams. I was gonna ask you about her, if you knew her. Do you know Mary Lou Williams?
The jazz.
Jazz.
Famous jazz.
Oh, I know, I mean, I
Is it the same
was
one?
asking Mark. And then somebody named Momozuka, who, I don't really know, but I have her bio here from Groves. That's some kind of. Anyway, that's just a smattering of people.
Now, John, in this list, are all those dances specifically, are all
Those
all
are
the
all-
music specifically composed for a
Right.
dance, or
Right.
was it some of their music used for?
I tried to weed out as much as possible those that were just used, pieces that were already composed that were just used.
How could you tell?
Well, you can tell, a lot of them, you know, you see Debussy or Jamal Fu is very popular impressionist composer, in use at the time. After a while, you get sort of adept at reading these, and there's a number of clues, like if somebody's full name is included, a lot of times that's an indication. A lot of times that person is at the piano when this performance is going on, so if it's their music at the piano, you know.
But
it
how
makes
could
sense.
you tell whether it wasn't just something they had worked out, that it was before and they just used it again?
Well, that's, sometimes I'm guessing, I must admit, you know, but a lot of the time, there is either a connection that, we'll say, a lot of times the reviewer will say, well, Mary Campbell's music was, you know, was perfect for this dance, or something like that. So it's a real clear indication that there was even if it wasn't composed exactly for the dance, there was something going on with the composer and the choreographer that knew that there was some collaboration.
You know, it's also true when you scan those reviews, you can see Louis' influence because, for example, Monpou was Louis introduced Monpou in his modern form. So Monpou became a popular composer. A lot of the Ravels, the Debussys, the Monpous, those were all really coming out from Louis' students. And, you know, Louis was also teaching musicians at Bennington. Musicians would go right into the pre-class composition class, and it would be a musicians for dancers course that would be done every summer, and then the American Dance Festival Connecticut. And so there would be some 6, 7, 8, 9 composers that would be writing Pavans, Galliards, Sarabands, and then working as dancers. And those composers inevitably became linked with concerts in that fall.
And because of this Horst influence, is another reason that I can surmise that they were pretty much written for the purpose. And this influence is that what happened in this early period of the 30s was a profound revolution in the way music was related to dance. And a lot of this had to do with Louis Horst's ideas. And in general, there was a very large debate that's kind of fun to follow in these pages about the role of music in choreography. Actually, the most extreme example of a change in attitude from the traditional, sort of traditional ballet approach to music. Of course, there's a couple of different approaches in that, and I don't mean to be dogmatic when I generalize here, but one of the most profound ideas was of a dance being composed and presented in complete silence. The most famous of which, I guess, is the water step in Rose Gardens. But this was a real attempt to give dance a meaning in modern society. Henry Cowell talked about how it happened that dance became what these people saw as somewhat of a trivial entertainment art. He blames it on the Christian church, which may or may not be true, but he wrote in the Dance Observer that the Christian church adopted music as part of its method of worship and fostered its study and development, while it abandoned the dance as a means of worship, relegating it to paganism. The dance continued as a secular means of having fun, but being disassociated with religion was not cultivated as a fine art and made into a composition in the sense of a concert dance, nor in the sense of a ritual. The art dance almost died out in the Western world. So Henry Cowell even thinks that it goes back as far as disassociating dance from ritual. It's very interesting to hear the Ghanaian dancing here, just being dumbfounded by some of our questions because of the, the disassociation of dance from community, and dance from meaning, and dance from ritual. And part of this movement of the 30s about, the Louis Horst thing and the modern dance, and what was the modern dance reason for existence, was to put meaning back into movement, to put meaning back into dance for Western society in the 20th century. And in order to do that, the idea was, well, let's get our meaning from the movement and have movement disassociate itself from music in order to build its own meaning, in order to find meaning in movement, not be overshadowed by the more developed sister art of music. So out of that came the great debate that I call it. Should music be stronger, or should music be composed after the dance is composed? Should it be composed at the same time? This all gets into how, working methods of collaboration. But it's not just a question of collaboration, it's a question of philosophy, right? Should the music be able to stand on its own as a concert piece? Should it be something that's strong enough and interesting enough to listen to? Or should it not? Should it be a piece of music that is lacking something? For example, okay? Such a passionate thing here. Excuse me. Lehman Engel, who wrote a bunch of stuff in the Dance Observer, was very involved, and we'll play a little piece of his music so you can understand what I'm talking about here. He wrote that dance composition should lack as much as the accompaniment of a song, but in different ways. Whereas the song accompaniment may be complete rhythmically, but lacking in melody of any distinction, the dance music is frequently complete melodically and incomplete rhythmically. He goes on to talk about the dance supplies a rhythm, but it cannot supply melody. That was his idea there. But the point is that he thought a good piece of dance music should not be complete in itself. It should be lacking as much as the accompaniment to a song should be lacking. Above all, he writes, no element of the dance music must be so abundantly present that it can possibly absorb too much attention and become foreground instead of background. Okay, here we have the difference of opinion. Yes, Richard?
That debate comes up also in the Dance Perspective 16.
Right.
I can't remember the year on that.
Right. I have that in a bibliography.
Passing that around.
See that. Since the time is short, I don't want to get too elaborate on this, but there was another side, and I'll read one quote of that. Oops, wrong page. Wallingford Rieger was sort of on the other side of this debate. He thought that music that's lacking would not give as much meaning to the dance. Of course, that's the other point of view. So this is a big, great debate between. He said, it is up to the composer to conceive music of which the dance already composed could be a possible interpretation. To write music that is on an equal footing, creative speaking, with the dance. In other words, complete in all its elements. So you have a great debate here. You have two sides. Music should not be all that great. Music should be, complete thing to lend its strength and beauty to the dance. So in the context of this debate, which was quite heated, people staying up all night and fighting, I assume it was heated. It'd be kind of fun to be in one of those. They're probably drinking beers. What do you mean everything should be done?
Your music's lacking and so are you.
It was a very, you're going to show a little bit of the lawn for radio.
Yes, I'm going to show a little bit actually. But first I want to show you a little bit of, this is going to be a little funny thing, but I think we'll save it for the end. Charles Weidman did a dance called Lynchtown, which is part of the Sweden Free thing. And this is Lynchtown performed, I think, at the ACDFA revival. ACDF, all right, not ADF. ADF. Acronyms, right? And watch it harmony, how it fits with the dance. There's a couple things. Wait, here's this thing here. Okay.
Did you tell us the composer of this?
Pause.
This is
This is Lehman Engel. Okay. Who was on the side of music should be lacking. Yes.
And this was 1930, I forgot what you did with
If
Yes.
I'm not mistaken, I performed this piece, and I don't remember seeing the composer's name on the score
Oh, well, now you know.
from the dance notation book.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was curious as to who wrote it. I mean, I could barely read the score. I had to recopy it because it was so poorly.
Well, it'd be interesting if you even played the same music as on the stage. Did you play clarinet?
No, I played the drums.
Oh,
I did one of these too, but I did bargain counter, huh?
I did bargain counter.
Okay, here we go, I think. You going around? Play. Is it going? No.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
let's go.
I see the line.
We see the floor.
Yep, it was on pause.
Lynchtown, composed in 1936, portrays a lynch mob's thirst for the kill. Like many of Weidman's greatest dances, Lynchtown was based on his personal experiences and observations. As a young boy, Charles witnessed a lynching in Omaha, Nebraska, and was overwhelmed by the violence of the crowd.
Well, I think maybe we saw enough of that.
Yeah,
We should,
okay.
and I'd be interested I'm very struck, for example, at how similar this is to Primitive Mysteries. The movement is that, and again, it's this narrowness of vision that just step, hop, that basic thing, and it's almost, it's
And
like
the
a little
scoring
sister
is very
dance.
similar
And the
too.
score is, it's like the same three musicians, play every concert. And it was either, they always had either tom-tom, or, like with calling horns, blowing to a cone, or Louis backstage, or shakers. I mean, the economy of music was very severe, and it amazes me that how much they
Should
spent
I
on the
brought the
horse
Primitive
book.
Mystery. Do you want to hear just the very opening of Primitive Mystery? Do you have that?
Yeah.
Just
While
here's
he's,
the
well,
sound
you
of
have
it.
to switch the wires.
Oh, is that also that little
Turn the volume down.
Level is
Is giving an entrance. It's if the section changes compositionally and along with the music.
Well, just to hear the similar
Now,
sound.
this is a score for Primitive Mysteries by Martha Grant by Louis Horst. This is held up actually in the pages of Dance Observer as a prime example of the perfect dance score.
That's where they go to.
And basically that thing keeps repeating because it's a kind of rondo form. There are 3 sections and it's very structural style. I think that was, Mysteries, 1932. Nancy, do you remember?
Anyway, it's interesting to, in viewing a lot of these older films at the New York Public Library, unfortunately, the only way you can see them is to go there to check them out. I started noticing this, what I sort of call it.
Is though, you'll be going to be able to see more of it.
Yeah. Some of these, of course, I think, is it still in the repertoire?
Yes.
Primitive Mysteries. It's a good dance section.
As is No Celebration.
Very good dance. But I started noticing what I called sort of early modern dance style. Here's the case. Which is very sparse instrumentation. Now, part of this is economics, right? Who had the money to do an orchestra? But part of it, I think, is goes along with the philosophy of wanting to strip back, pull back. What are we doing with music? How does music relate to dance? And Janet brought up an interesting point about the Schoenberg influence, the Weber influence, also in modern music. Of course, there was a movement to strip music of all its sort of sentimental trappings and get down to very spare style. But modern dance picked up on that, even if I don't know what exactly if that influence was there or not. But certainly that aesthetic is there, very spare sort of
And
thing.
it is also true that, let's face it, the concert world in dance was very small at that point. Louis was the pianist. He was the music for Helen Tomaris, for Agnes DeMille, for everybody that was choreographing. So that, lots of time, he wasn't allowing for much choice, and he was pervading the taste in music, I think. One of his big things was he was trained as a violinist as a child, and he grew to hate the sound of strings. And the first thing he wanted to do was eliminate, he wanted to treat the piano as a percussion instrument in a sense, and he wanted to, he was interested in winds, because winds had to do with breath. And so this piece for flute and oboe and piano was fairly typical, that they were ridding themselves of the domination of the romantic stringed instrument.
Well, he said strings was sentimental.
Yeah, not appropriate.
They were elaborate and sentimental.
Isn't it interesting at the end of his life, he'd say, now let's have a sentimental element.
Yeah.
He
But,
said
and the stripping down was going on everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, this was the time of Willa Palace there, the Novel de Meuble, where everything was unfurnished and stripped. Take all the furniture out of the scene.
Yes.
And they were beginning to collect that art, and New York, the Metropolitan, the Museum of Art was just opening its doors in 1929, and they were using those for their models.
Well, it is. Oh, sorry.
I was just wondering if maybe socially something to do with the depression.
Yes, a lot to do with the depression. They had only themselves, and I think when you look at New Dance, the Juan Rodriguez score, and the whole concept of New Dance was really incredibly idealistic for Doris to have this community and a theme and variations of everyone who comes and does their 7/7/4 variation and goes back, and then we're all a unit, and we're there was this kind of political pride in this social unity. Yeah.
Also the interest in archaic cultures, right? Like the Greeks and all the early people early dancers you see in togas, and the idea of the Greeks and certainly Martha, of course.
Well,
about
they
that.
had gone.
And then
But Louis was
yeah.
very interested in modes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It was
And
modes.
mainly he was interested in modes because, of course, he adored Eric Satie and thought that that was using modes and pentatonic and the simplest forms of dissonance and whole tone. Those were the Bible to him. That was the starting place. It was going back to go ahead and that was doing it.
I wonder too if the simplicity of the music of the period was also based in the idea that a lot of these composers were playing for dance classes also, and certainly the Lloyds were, Louis was, and the fact that they understood where the beat happened, and well, certainly in Primitive Mysteries, exactly every chord comes on the movement, you know. There aren't, in other words, all the subdivisions are paired out.
I don't think the whole institution of the dance class was really that well formed at this time. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well,
but it was in a sense you had this army of people, you know, playing in all these studios.
No, but I mean, a lot of these
Yeah,
composers,
they were absolutely the same musicians who were there playing and working and if there were pianists and not drums in the studio.
We don't have time, so I'm going to try to, you know, fortunately, this conversation's good, but that would kind of squelch it. Another thing that's interesting about what we just heard is the use of percussion, which I find it to be used in a very simplistic way compared now that we have assimilated a lot of these world cultures that have a much more sophisticated idea about rhythm. This drum writing seems so simplistic to me, and it's really used in support of the dance movement. And it's interesting to get back to this great debate about what role music should have with dance is the real collaboration idea. Should the dance be made first and then the composer brought in to support that? Or should they be made at the same time? Or should a piece of music
No, I
be
think
written
the debate
first?
really came after they sort of, the musicians sort of got wise. What am I doing in the studio? Well, wait, just like you folks are just starting to say, hey, I'm here in person. I think the debate started to really take off when, you know, Martha would go and hear Aaron Copland's, what is it, dioramic, or whatever it is, the theme variations, and then used it for a score. And Aaron was very pleased, and we want to dance to this, and the whole concept was, you know, as young'uns, they were growing up and very enthusiastic about having their music played. And when they kind of got wise and said, okay, well now, they started to worry a little bit about their reputations, well, and how strong their voice was. And I think that's when these debate articles kind of came up. Also, they were meeting, for example, Aaron Copland or Galileo, who really firmly believed that music, I'm going to write a piece of music, you want to dance to it, great, go ahead, but that's not going to change anything I'm going to do. As a matter of fact, I'm not even going to give you three beats before sections or whatever. And so the great debate, I think, some happened with composers and dance musicians who were trying to, they wanted to have their works presented. On the other hand, they were starting to get nervous about the integrity of their work. As Martha Graham, by 36 and 37, those things are starting to be reviewed all the time.
Yeah, that's a good point, because Lehman Engel worked a lot in Broadway. It's interesting to think that, you know, the composer of that very severe score was also steeped in the whole Broadway tradition. And if I were a Broadway producer and I go to this concert and hear music by Lehman Engel, I'm like, oh, maybe I don't want to hire the guy to write my score. So anyway, this is Wallingford Rieger's. This is actually, I don't have it queued up to new dance, but I have it queued up, and we'll try to find new dance after I do this. But you know, counters.
It's right at the end.
I know that.
It's the last 3 minutes.
Yeah, but this is With My Red Fires, which was part of the projected triptych of that, and this is his. This dance also was pretty much finished when he came in to work with it. I'm sure there was some hidden tape as far as his score and all that, but this is sort of his solution to this problem. And so I think this is sort of a percussion section that I have queued here. But, harmonic language, and his attempt to create some sort of musical whole out of what he was presenting with was a
She Mickey Mouse.
I
She's
guess
Minnie Mouse.
people are leaving here. Unfortunately, I have a lot more things to cover, but just the highlights here.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
One thing I found very interesting was other solutions to this problem that other composers came up with. One which I don't really know how to describe to you because it's only described in this article and I don't know what it means really, but it's a solution that Engel came up with called choric sound, which to my mind is sort of, I think, similar to, I don't know how many of you have seen Sun Ra and his orchestra,
Yeah.
but he sort of plays the orchestra in a sort of as an improvising, composing conductor. And I get the feeling that choric sound was sort of that same idea, but in a more composed kind of fashion, because improvisation was really not accepted as a viable way to present an art form. Henry Cowell had a very interesting solution.
On the other hand, in Life of the Bee from 1929 of Doris Humphreys, there are 32 measures of improv. And the score was a wax paper over a cone. And Lawrence off stage. So, I think we've kind of settled into what we think improvisation is at the moment, or that it needs to be this thing that lasts forever. But I think it viable, I don't know. At a concert of it, I don't know, but I do know that Doris did use it in 29.
That's interesting. Henry Cowell came upon the solution to the problem of coming into an already composed dance. How do you make music for this? When I first wrote my first dance score, it was like that. I need 4 bars of 4/4. I need an accent on the third beat, the third bar. I had this very elaborate rhythmic and emotional map that I was to follow, and it came out to be, it's kind of weird. It might make it into some sort of bizarre operetta score, but it came out to be a very chopped up, weird kind of thing. And Henry Cowell, faced with the same sort of problem, came up with a very creative solution which he called elastic form. Now, part of the reason he came up with this is that he was in California in prison on a morals charge, which I think is homosexual morals charge in California. And Martha Graham had this piece that he was supposed to write music for. So there he was in prison, and he had to get this dance score done. So, and all the way across the country. So he came up with this idea of elastic form, which is very interesting, and I'll read you how he describes it in the Dance Observer.
Please take as long as you want until the next score.
He writes, this is the basis for this, in order to establish a meeting ground for musical and dance composition in which the dance will be more definite than usual in form, although just as free to make changes, and the music will be less rigid than usual, although no less containing structure, I would propose the establishment of what might be called elastic form. And skipping down to how he describes it, the first and most important thing is each melodic phrase should be so constructed that it may be expanded or contracted in length by shortening or lengthening of certain key tones. In writing down, the composer should give the different versions. And basically what it is, instead of going through all this, basically what it is the composer and choreographer decide on a form, a rhythmic sort of form, and an emotional general kind of form. And then the composer writes a series of phrases that can be put together and lengthened or shortened depending upon the needs of where it's supposed to go in this dance. And if the dancer needs to make a few changes, because, even in that phrase, I needed a few more counts here because that impulse really made me feel like I wanted 5, 6, 7 and not just a 5. Well, then you could say, okay, here's the phrase here. We can lengthen it 2 counts by taking this note that the composer said we could lengthen. We'll lengthen this note. And thereby, apparently in the working out of this piece, Norman Lloyd was in charge of working it out. He said it was quite remarkable in that it took them about an hour to work out, from the score that Cowell gave them, to work out this piece. And he said it was quite successful. So that's an interesting creative solution.
Yeah.
I also know Lloyd was a fabulous composer. And arrangers that he really...
And the other The other interesting thing that I found out that I personally did not know about the history of music and modern dance is John Cage and the prepared piano. John Cage was working in Seattle with a choreographer named Sevilla Fort, and doing this piece for her. They wanted to do a piece called Bacchanal, and she wanted some sort of percussion kind of thing, but he didn't have any percussion instruments, and he had a piano. So actually, in response to this call for a dance piece by a choreographer named Sevilla Fort, he came up with the idea of the prepared piano, and this here is the very first piece of prepared piano written in response to a call for a piece for modern dance, and I kind of thought that was kind of cool. You know?
He got that from Cowell, too.
Well, he did study with Powell, and certainly you can't say that, you know, he invented it because of modern dance.
Yeah, but Cowell had stuck things on top of the strings, and so, oh, why not? You know,
Right, why not
so
get into
let's
it?
put them in the strings.
Right. So anyway, just a little bit of Bacchanal. Is it the green one?
Yeah, green is white, yeah.
Yeah,
Cole got into it, yeah.
So this is from 38. I'll let that kind of go in the background.
That's all music is good for.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I think we have
We get the idea.
You know, it's also true that musicians that study with Louis or hung out with Louis or that turned up the studio would probably end up getting employed in some way or other, either at Sarah Lawrence or at Barnard College or play at the studio or whatever. And Louis wasn't ever finding jobs for all these people. And in a way, that network is we were talking about that. I think that's why there's a full-time position at Sarah Lawrence. It's one of the first places for musicians, because Louis was there in the 30s and we told him he needed it.
What you have here, I don't know if everybody got one, is sort of a subjective bibliography of books and articles that I feel everyone really interested in this history should read. I put in a plug for myself and the Guild here, you know, my article last year. But Janet's book is really fantastic. If you haven't read her book on Louis Horst, it's just outstanding, as are Catherine's books, especially the one I mentioned here. And then, lately, people have been coming out, especially the Koch International label, has been coming out with records, recordings, and CDs of music written for modern dance. And here I have this Koch International is one of the big ones. But on the second half of this is a discography of some of these interesting scores. There's the really great recordings. There are two of them, the music from Martha Graham and more music from Martha Graham. These are phenomenal recordings, and I highly recommend them to anyone. The first one has, this is the second one. The first one has Appalachian Spring and I think State of the Heart. And this one has Aaron Into the Maze, Parodiade, and Night Journey. And they're really stunningly performed. Here's a disc, John Cage, Perilous Night and Four Walls, which both the scores were written together. That's really interesting. And so there's sort of this interesting things coming out. One of the other thing I did when I was in New York is try to start on this discography, and there are very few scores and pieces that are on record. Partly for the reason that, you know, a lot of them were not written with the idea that they were going to be music long-lasting. You know, that they didn't want that. They wanted it to live and die with the dance because that was against the aesthetic to have the music live after the dance. So anyway, I hope you find these readings and discography, you know, sort of interesting and Read Janet's book, it's fantastic.
I'd like to say one
I gotta go.
last thing, just as a kind of addendum to John's discussion of all of these people. When I started working on this Horst, I really wrote this book out because I felt like I needed to know what my roots were. It was really a personal search. It was, I've been teaching this stuff, I was his assistant, I lived that stuff, I was in the Limon company, I knew all of it, sort of, but I didn't really know, well, what the heck was under all of this anyway? And so it was kind of going back to me, going back to go ahead. And when I did that, this isn't even as long as it was, but when I first started researching, I never thought this was going to be this huge project. It was. But what I did at first was just take Louis's life, and it starts when he was born in 1884, and this goes down to when he died. And what I did was graph where he taught, who he taught for, what articles he wrote when he started the Dance Observer. It says here when he was at Sarah Lawrence, what semesters, what pieces he composed, who he was living with at the time, all of that, where he was living at the time, and even just as a piece of graphic from this great distance that you're sitting at, you can see this highly dense middle section where you look at this, he was doing everything. He was writing the music, he was editing Dance Observer in his closet, he was delivering the papers to West 14th Street, he was making, he was going to every concert and every showing anybody asked him to go see. He was rehearsal directing for somebody else. He was making sure Primitive Mysteries, everybody stepped on the right foot. And I think that you all really do this too. It's just that he was German. and very monastic in his and very unforgiving. He just really had a very single point of view and didn't give up. Totally didn't give up. And it seems to me all of these people that he worked with along the way really paid off, just like I'm sure all the dancers you're working with along the way. It really is a network, and it really does pay off. You really are educating dancers in little ways, even and in a lot of big ways too. And as when I hear discussions about possibly composers teaching, musicians teaching composition, I say, hey, why not? You're objective. You know form, you know quality, you're another pair of eyes, you're not subjectively related to those students because you're worrying about whether their legs are straight or not. You're an outsider as a pair of eyes. And I think you really Louis had the information, but he also had the smarts to back off and say to the dancer in front of him, it's your dance. He knew how, like a good parent, to back off. But he was also very disciplined in saying, well, is that the B section? Or did you start a new theme? And what's the ending? The simplest things that all musicians would ask of themselves. Dancers somehow seem to forget to ask. Well, like, where are you going with this? Is that theme going to come back? Or is this section too long in proportion? Those things that you're weighing all the time, you need to know that dancers who are working from kind of inside out, forget that. They really don't